Two Nations Under Ted, a Ted Lasso podcast, is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show. Back with you here on Two Nations Under Ted, a Ted Lasso podcast. As you can see, the trio is back once again. I'm Tom Clark, of course, joined by Jay Luft and Joe Higgens. We are here for episode number 3, and we're anxious to get started here today. Gentlemen, what did you think going into watching number 3? First of all, had you remembered any of number 3? Because I'm really having a lot of nostalgia for a show that I claim to love and have forgotten a lot of the older episodes. So,
yeah, it's strange because I've only watched the series once through.
Same.
And it is that thing of going, I remember this episode, but I don't remember half of what happened in it. You remember like the key beats of it, but all the little in-between stuff is gone. And episode 3, I think, contains my favourite Ted Lasso genuine surprise moment, which we'll get to when we get to, but I kind of need it as like a ringtone, or, well, no one has ringtones anymore, do they? Because, you know, it's not 1998, but it's so good, and we now start to see Ted's magic starting to weave its way into people's lives, and this is when it all really starts.
What do you think, Jay Loved of The Independent?
I'm glad you got on.
I love it.
Yeah, I think this is certainly the first episode. I was saying to you guys before we started recording, you can see they're really starting to lay the groundwork for like what will come in future series of the show. And this is the episode where like you really start to see like little changes with people like Sam and Nate and even Trent. Like Trent goes into this like whole like story with such bad intentions, and then to come out at the end and write that lovely piece about Ted, it's like even though I don't want to support him, I can't help but root for him.
Even though he's going to fail, I won't gloat when he does, and I'm like, that's the best anyone could hope for, isn't it? Really,
it's the best line. And man, coming into this, I feel like I listen. If I sit here and tell you I was on Ted's side from the beginning, I can't say I was. Not because I didn't like him, but because I actually, as a viewer, didn't know what was going on. There were moments when I said, is he messing with them? Honest to God, is he messing with them? And like, they can't believe he's not messing with them. So it's cool for me because I'm remembering how it felt to watch it the first time. I was kind of in the same boat they were, where I didn't hate him, but I'm like, I can't tell if he's playing level. Mind games. Right.
Yeah.
Which is where Trent's coming down from. So you really want to dislike Trent, and you do in the beginning. I did. But like by the end, you're I like this guy.
Well, it was that awful, is this a joke, isn't it, thing? But is the Independent owned by the same people that own that other newspaper whose name I won't say? Because
I don't know.
It probably is, because it's all Viscounts and Barons and stuff, isn't it, who own everything.
But what's the other paper?
The Sun.
It is, because she mentions that.
She says, and I assume it's true, but it was just one of those things that I was like, I didn't bother to fact check that, because
I am currently fact checking.
It probably is, because like I said, it's like 4 people who own all the British press media, isn't it?
See, over here for the paper that everyone hates is the Enquirer, but the National Enquirer is such a load of garbage, and everyone knows it's a load of garbage. You know what I mean?
That's the Men in Black magazine, newspaper
aliens,
thing,
it's
Elvis on the moon sort of stuff.
I think this Sun's a bit more mean-spirited, isn't it? Like
we won't. I think we covered enough of the story last time, didn't we?
Don't worry about it, right? So, Jay, what did your research uncover there, pal?
I can't tell. Oh, here we go. No, they aren't.
Oh.
The Sun's owned by Rupert Murdoch. which doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
There you go.
And the Independent is owned by a different holdings company.
It's probably a shell. Look, yeah.
Yeah.
Which Rupert Murdoch probably owns.
Yeah, for sure. Well, now that we have that mystery solved, kids, we're going to move on. This is, as we said before, Season 1, Episode 3. The title of this episode is Trent Crimm, the Independent. Original air date is August 14th, 2020. Directed by Tom Marshall and story by Jane Becker. And we always remind you there are 10 episodes in Season 1. We're getting there. When we last left the Ted Lasso gang, Rebecca was in the midst of a plot to discredit Ted and bring scandal to AFC Richmond in hopes of destroying the team that she got from her cheating ex-husband in their divorce. And guys, when this episode opens, Rebecca could not be happier. She wakes up at 6 a.m. to a song called Connection by Elastica. She's smiling. She's ready to go screw up somebody's life, screw up this team. Like, you know by watching the first two what she's up to. But if you didn't know, you're like, oh, she's in a great mood. She's ready to face her day. No, she's ready to go screw stuff up.
Fully dressed and ready to go at 6 a.m. Like,
yes.
I get up at 5 and like I'm not even. I mean, I'm on my way to work at 6, but
you're not looking like her.
Trousers on, yeah. Like it's. But
doing your belt off as you're getting on the bus.
Literally this morning, yeah. But because she got Higgins to take pictures of Ted and Keeley in not even a compromising situation. He's feeding her a burger. Like, it's
right.
But the British media being what it is, and we love a scandal. And they've decided she's asked them to push this on the Sun to discredit Ted, and like you said, sow disharmony. And she arrives at work, and it's not in any of the papers at all.
It's not.
And she's furious.
She is furious.
She's very
angry. Her plan has not come to fruition.
She calls Higgins, right? He's at home at the dinner table, and he lies. First time we get to see Higgins' kids, right? He's got 4 boys here. He lies and tells her he's at the office.
It's the fact that he's on speed dial as shithead as well. Yeah.
So
good.
A later episode, Rebecca's phone ringing and it says shithead and it's Higgins.
But are you in the office? Yeah. Well, you best come up here then. Yeah. And you see him just like dash out of the house. And yeah, it turns out that Keeley has managed to get it held back a day because she knows someone that works there. That's what has done this. But like she explains this to Ted in a. I don't know whether this is the correct order because my notes are just like the. So is there anything before this?
Well,
this was very early in the episode. Early.
Ted walks in and he wants to tell her a story. He says, finally saw Big Ben. Boy, thought I'd seen the biggest clock there was. When I was a kid, my parents took me to the Allen Bradley clock tower in Milwaukee. You know, they ended up leaving me there all by myself. 3 hours and 42 minutes. You know how I know that? And she says, you were staring at the clock? He says, I was staring at the clock.
Yes.
That's a great exchange, man.
It's classic Ted.
It is.
Just telling his stories that don't go anywhere.
No.
Just endear you to him.
Yeah.
Because there's no reason for him to share that other than to just sort of disarm people. I think that's what Ted's all about. Yeah. It is just disarming people with kindness, which this episode again proves. And
for sure, she tells him that she has a branding meeting to make it quick, and he comes back with, "I always feel so bad for the cows, but you got to do it, otherwise they just get lost."
If I was back home, I'd be sitting here waiting for you to stop laughing.
That's good.
And yeah, he hands his biscuits over for the day, and he leaves. And we see
that
him. Does he go into the team room?
He's in the team room, yeah.
As doesn't Higgens arrive as Ted leaves?
That's
Or is it
a
Ted
bit later
passes-
on, I think, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Or Ted passes Jamie and Keely, doesn't he? Then as he's walking to the team room, and then Keely pulls Ted to one side.
That comes later, but you're right. That does happen, but it happens a bit later.
I think the next
I know,
I think
all
the
over
next
the place.
section is it not Ted writing the team plans on the board?
He is.
Oh
Yes.
yeah,
And
yeah.
he draws them all out in great detail and then just wipes them off because I love symbolic gestures.
I love
Good.
it. Yeah. Yeah, and Nate's emptying the bin. He empties the same bin about 4 or 5
He's just
times,
lurking,
trying to
isn't
get
he?
their
Yeah.
attention.
And he's wanting to give Ted an idea. This is the
Oh.
first time. Of course, we're only in 3 episodes in, kids, but this is the first time that Nate, you can't say asserts himself because they had to pull it out of him.
Well,
But you can tell he wants to contribute here.
he has ideas, and we get a lovely bit where he's going through his pockets. No, not that. It's just all these random bits of paper he's got, and he hands it over, and he goes, "It's probably not very good." And Ted says, "I have difficulty hearing people who don't believe in themselves."
It's great.
And then Nate goes,
Yeah.
"Well, it's all right." And they
That's
both
fine.
drop to the floor, covering their ears. Go, "Gee, why are you yelling?" And it's just a way of making Nate feel like he's part of it.
Yeah.
And it's a really lovely thing. And he sort of explains roughly what it is, but you don't. It's all done in you don't see it until they go outside, and it turns out that they're gonna use Jamie Tartt as a decoy, because everyone will mark Jamie because he's the star player, and then they can pass it out wide to Sam, and Sam can slot it in, and it's a great play. It's but Jamie's furious with it.
Yeah, it serves 2 purposes as well. That because obviously it's a great play, but also it's integrating Sam into the team more to help him kind of reach his potential, which maybe is something that Ted didn't really consider. But obviously Nate, as soon as Nate says we use Sam, you can see Ted's eyes kind of light up when he says it, because that's how we get him. That's how we get him to integrate into the team better.
And I go back to the NBA comparison. I'm going to do it a lot. I warn you, because I'm seeing it a lot. But the best player on the team is going to get double teamed every possession. The only thing they could do was double team Jordan. They couldn't stop him. No one could stop him. The only thing they could do is just double team him and hope for the best. And that's the idea, is that when Jordan learned to kick the ball out is when the Bulls started winning. It has to be said again. And that's what they're trying to get Jamie to understand here.
But Jamie's not having any of it because he's arrogant, and he is who he is. But I believe, isn't Sam a right back anyway? Sam is a defender.
Yeah, Sam's a right back, so that's a role where he as the show later later on in the show, obviously he pushes up forward and he just becomes a right winger. But right back and right wing are essentially an interchangeable position. Right back is just a more defensive role of what Sam ends up being anyway. Which you tend to find a lot of younger players will kind of they'll start off in a position like that and they'll transition to one or the other because they've got the better attribute of that part. So obviously Sam's coming as a right back, but he's really good attacking, so they're gonna go, we'll just have you attack instead of defend because we don't need you to defend.
So I don't want to get us too sidetracked, but the whole and I guess I can spoil it for later. The whole thing with Nate, where suddenly he right, and he's different hair, different suit, and he splits, whatever. I hate to give stuff away, but in my head, I was trying to rectify. Explain to me what Ted did to him, because I never could figure it out. But after watching this again, the way that Ted oversells his reactions, in Ted's mind, I'm really going out of my way to help this kid who feels like he's not seen, because he's important. He's part of the team. As he says here, everyone in the building's part of the team, right? Yes. So Ted had great intentions, but if you're Nate, the first couple times you hear it, fine. But the more you hear it, do you start feeling like Ted's talking down to me? You know what I mean?
I always thought that Nate's problem was that he didn't get enough recognition. And because Rupert basically flatters him into the job, doesn't he? And I think that was Nate's big. He thought he got too big too soon. He went from being a bullied, insecure kit man.
Yeah.
Because in this bit as well, like we see him being picked on constantly,
big time
as well. And as the first season progresses, he grows and grows in confidence. But then I genuinely think that he thinks that Ted doesn't give him the credit that he deserves, which is yes and no. Because he comes up with good plays and he's very good at making these plays and stuff. But also he's only got that confidence to do that because Ted gave him that confidence.
Yeah.
So it's kind of biting the hand that feeds.
Yeah. It is. It is. We have to mention here also in the midst of all this that Ted tells them they're going to try it, right? And Ted starts strutting, Beard follows, and Nate follows him, and they're just being goofy, silly. But again, Nate is coming out of his shell. Like I have a friend who's, by the way, he's still my friend years and years later. When I first met him, he was as quiet as a church mouse. He never spoke. And like when you finally got through the thin candy shell, he's funny, he's genuine, he's humble, he's a really good guy. But like you wouldn't know, you wouldn't think he's a dick. But he just never spoke. And I'm like, I'm going to get to know this guy. And man, I'm glad I did. Some people are just, like I said, they're in their shell. They're afraid to come out. I love how we see Nate's progression. Really, episode 1's where it starts when Ted notices him and speaks to him. And he's like, you speaking to me?
Well, you talking Nate, me? And he's, unless there's another Nate, you'll be the default Nate.
Nate.
Yeah. But do you not think that like Nate has become that because of the way that he was treated and it was allowed to go on?
Yeah.
Under other managers and stuff, and it would grind you down, and eventually you would just accept your role as I'm the whipping boy for everyone else, and that's not how Ted works. Because, like you said, everyone is part of the team, from the people at the top to the people that scrub the boots. You all serve a purpose.
The scene with Jamie and Keely, as you guys mentioned before, in the hallway, and it's great because she's rhyming like crazy. She tells them about the pick of them, and she comes up with Manager Shag Star Player's girlfriend. That was the headline they were going to run with, right? This is Ted says a more accurate headline would be Manager innocently feeds young woman whose relationship does not define her.
I know.
When she said tart breaks his heart or something like that.
Oh, it's good.
And she's like, see, this is what I've got. I'm adorable and I can rhyme.
Keely's got bars. Yeah.
Lasso makes passo and creates team fiasco.
I'm cute as a button. And like this is the first time we see like Ted go, okay, well, we're gonna have to put a stop to this then. We can't have this run. And so they both go up to see Rebecca. And this is, I don't know whether it's here or whether it's later on. I think it is later on where Rebecca says, I've spoken to the owner of the Sun. And Ted goes, you mean God?
Yeah.
It's just one of those, because there's such honesty in his face. Like he genuinely thinks she's got a direct phone line to him. I laughed so hard at that because it's so dumb. It's such a dumb joke, but Ted sells it in such a good way of what? Like he doesn't understand it. It's a beautiful joke.
This is ruining Rebecca's plan, right? This is destroying it. This is not what she wanted. She's not happy. Well, I love what I love what he tells her. He says, I'd hate to see you arm wrestle Michelle Obama, but I wouldn't be able to take my eyes off it either.
I've never had someone pay me that compliment before. And then Keely goes, you have got big action man-y style arms. And she just goes, all that. It's just like, but she says, she'll take care of it. She knows the owner of the Sun. They leave happy. And she turns to Higgins and goes, "There's no way of this being traced back to me." And he sort of goes, "Well."
I was gonna say there was the whole thing where Keely was like, "I want to find out who's done this," and like Keely's on the warpath, and then Rebecca's like, "Oh shit,
don't do
like,
that."
This will
this
get back
does
to me."
come back to bite them later on, but yeah, Higgins is like, "And didn't you use an alias or a burner?" And then Higgins goes, "I'm not a spy." It's like he's just such a put upon man, isn't he? Like
He is, dude.
He's so good, Higgins.
He's five. You know, was it five lads, four lads,
Four,
and a
I think.
and a 20-year-old cat.
Yeah,
in a very small house. But so that's like they're going to take care of that. But as a favour to the Sun, they're going to get Trent Crimm, the Independent, to shadow Ted for a day, which is, I guess, like not a bad fallback. If you can't run the picture, Trent Crimm's going to do a hatchet job on him, and because people, I think, isn't it when Rebecca comes in and Higgins is waiting at the front door, and she's like, "Oh, is it to prove that you're on time today?" And he says that the problem is that we have a strong fan base. We have a really strong fan base, and Rebecca says, "Yeah, well, hopefully this will destroy that." So she's still got a heart set on ruining this team at whatever cost.
So you said hatchet job. I wonder if it's as much of that as it is she's hoping that when Trent spends 5 minutes with Ted, he's going to think he's a freaking idiot. Do you love films that have the same plot over and over and over and over again with only slightly different looking people in the main roles, but just don't have time to watch them all? You do? Then simply listen to Hallmark of Greatness, the only podcast that takes you through such masterpieces as Love at Sea, Love at Christmas, and A Volcano Sacrifice for Love. See a pattern here? Available wherever you get podcasts from, and also find us on social media by looking for Hallmark of Greatness. And that's what he's going to write. That Ted Lasso is an idiot imbecile, a podunk that has no business being here. Like, that's what she's hoping for, I guess, right?
Possibly, yeah. And then he writes that, and then, I mean, like, the fans are against him anyway, as we've seen from when he goes to the pub, or, I mean, the crowd chanting at him and stuff as well. But this would be, like, the final nail in that coffin. This would be enough to get rid of him. I think Higgins comes in and says, like, we've had other managers on the phone waiting, and I'm assuming they're all real people that he says. I don't know. It's sports.
I didn't get the names of the people he said.
I'm assuming they're all real because, like, we've already established that
probably
there is bits of truth in this when it comes.
There's real football teams and there's real football personalities. Yeah, absolutely. But it's interesting as well because I feel like not to get like too far ahead of ourselves, but I feel like with Trent's article as well, every time there's a scenario, Trent's instantly thinking the worst thing. Like with the training and like Ted mentioning about Nate gives this tactic. It's like you kit man. And he's like, oh yeah, you've just got to give people a chance. I'm happy to listen to anyone's input, sort of thing. And he kind of like it's like he finds himself admiring Ted for it, and then instantly like, I think
this is when they're running that play, isn't it?
Yep.
And Jamie's like, but I don't like this. And Roy comes over. He says it's the funniest thing I've ever seen. It's funnier than Step Brothers. And Ted's like, oh, that's high praise indeed.
That's you with the bed.
So good.
And that scene with the bunk beds, it's I'm having to rethink my entire structure now.
Yeah. And that bit takes a long time, and he's so matter of fact, and it gets funnier the longer he talks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You can't imagine Roy Kent liking Step Brothers. Like,
no.
I imagine he just watches The Godfather constantly. Like, it's
right.
But it's also when he says, "Oh, Nate came up with this play," and this is where we first start seeing the relationship between Beard and Nate as well.
Yeah, that's true.
Because Ted says, well, "What do you think of Nate?" to Beard, and he just nods, and he goes, "There's your headline. Man nods."
He says he's a good kid, and then he's like, a Beard wouldn't say that if he didn't think it.
And this is when we start seeing that relationship, which pays off at the end of the season.
This is the episode we start seeing that Beard's got a bit of a wild side as well, where they're having like the team meeting, and he's like falling asleep, and Ted's like, "Oh, what time did you get home?" He's like, "I didn't,"
and he doesn't touch it. He just leaves it alone. He doesn't.
Ted just goes,
yeah. It's worth mentioning here. Also, we've talked a lot about Nate so far, and with good reason. By the end of this episode, I hate Colin and Isaac. I hate both of them. Like, Colin is a prick, 100%.
I think so. Obviously, knowing what we know, like now in the bigger picture of things, I think it's kind of more Isaac had a lot of growing up to do, and Colin's trying to fit in support system. But as a first impression, this is horrible.
That's what I mean. Yeah, terrible.
I don't know whether or not they were just supposed to be background characters, and then they were like, "Well, we can flesh them out."
That's what I felt.
And make them legitimate people with problems and grievances and stuff. But yeah, I was like, I forgot what horrible people they were.
Terrible.
Like they're bullying Nate, and
well, the trick play didn't help, because one of the reasons they're hazing him again and bullying him. Colin tells Isaac that Nate is their new head coach. Ted comes in, tells him good job, and he says, because they did that bit where Ted says, we're going to run around the track, and whoever can't catch me has to run 4 laps. Let's go! And he just runs.
He just dashes off.
And Beard's like hoofing it behind him, and they're all going, "What?"
Yeah,
there's a brilliant joke in the dressing room after that as well, where Ted was like, "Oh, look at that! Almost all you were faster than me, except for Coach Beard." And he's like, "Didn't you major in track?" And he goes, "Nope, I was part of the chess team."
Hoorah!
He says, "Illinois State champs, baby." That's good.
But it's fleshing out all this little slices of backstory, and you find out, okay, because the chess thing comes into play in the next episode as well.
Yeah.
But and Roy's had it like enough of this bullying. He's like, it's not fair. Like, Nate's a good kid. Like, he sees it. As much as Roy is like a cantankerous old man, he is a just man. Like, and he doesn't like this sort of stuff. Yeah. So he goes and says he speaks to Ted, and we get again some more of Ted's like homespun wisdom, like a Tedism, yes, as people were calling them. And what was it? What was the lad's name? If he offers you a candy bar, you get the hell out of there as soon as you can.
You never take it. He's probably pooped in a butterfinger wrapper.
He said he learned two pretty big lessons on the rough and tumble playgrounds of Brook Ridge Elementary School. As if we all go, yeah. If Ronnie Fouch offers you a candy bar, you immediately say no, and you get the hell out of there, because there's a good chance that little son of a gun has just pooped inside a Butterfinger wrapper. No one ever saw him do it, but a couple people ate it. Number 2, and he just keeps going. Number 2, if the teacher tells a bully not to
over it, like
that's standard behavior. Like, Number 2, if the teacher tells a boy not to pick on someone, it's just going to make it worse. He goes, "So you're not going to do anything?" He says, "Nope." And he just walks out.
He just walks out, and
I think with this as well, though, obviously the kind of like underlying theme of this episode is Ted trying to make Roy a leader.
Yes.
And it effectively even says it to Beard after Roy leaves the room. He says, "Well, we're not going to do anything. Roy's going to do something."
It's the first domino that has to fall is in that man's heart. Yeah, and it's a really nice line.
He said, "He's the one. He's the one. Yeah, he has. Yeah, we got to get him." Yeah.
I kind of think that Roy's already sort of seen it, even though he keeps calling him Ronald McDonald and Yankee Doodle and stuff. Like, he knows that his intentions are good, and he may not agree with his methods because, as we find out as well, he's very, very old school. He grew up horribly, which has made him the person he is today. But his heart's in the right place, and he doesn't like seeing like injustices meted out to people who don't deserve them. And so Roy goes to see Jamie working out. And God bless Jamie. He's a himbo, isn't he? At this point, this is before like we get the character in depthness of Jamie, because he just starts telling him about his workout regimen. Was it 40 pounds, 10 reps? And then he's like, can you lift that? And he says, no, but I can use your ball bag as a speedball. And I was like, Jesus.
He says, do you want to try that? He says, not especially.
No.
He said, Roy, and this is great. This is Roy sounding like an adult for the first time that's not bitter and old. He says, do you even understand the influence you have on this team? And Jamie says, I'm the shit. Yeah. And he goes, no, you're a bell end. But because your right foot was kissed by God, the boys look up to you. Whoever wrote that should get a raise. Yeah. That's a brilliant line right there.
He basically says to him, stop Colin and Isaac picking on Nate. And he goes, like, I think Jamie's like a little bit afraid of Roy, because this is the first time Roy's ever stood up for anything, it would seem like.
True.
I think Roy was just prepared to come to Richmond and just run out his days, wasn't he? Like, it feels like. And this is the first time he's ever sort of, so he's like, oh, okay, I will.
Yeah.
Roy stomps off. He goes, as he's leaving, Isaac says to him, are you coming to the club tonight, Roy? Will you be there? Yeah. No, then. Fuck no. Yeah.
We got to do this. We got to, because that moment is so good. He's like, Roy, come to the club tonight. And he's like, are you going to be there? And he gets all chippy,
Yeah.
Just to set him up.
Yeah. But he doesn't even stop to say no. He just no and walks off.
Yeah.
And it's what Roy does best, is just so not even giving them the time of day for a rejection. It's beautiful. Jamie comes over and he says, you know that thing you keep messing with Nate? And they go, yeah. And you think, oh, Jamie's going to like finally grow up a little bit. And he goes, keep doing it. It amuses me. Like he's some sort of Roman emperor, thumbs up, thumbs down style thing.
Well, it's the way as well. Like he looks at Roy and Roy looks at him and sees him talking to them. And as soon as he turns the corner, Jamie's like, keep it up.
It's a proper
we didn't mention maneuver. Oh, for sure. He saw him and then he flipped it. We got to mention real quick that Ted gave the players books as gifts earlier, because that will play in later.
I didn't see what they all were. I know that Roy gets A Wrinkle in Time, which
Jamie got F. Scott Fitzgerald book, but I can't remember what one
it was. It doesn't matter because he throws it straight in the bin. I also like the fact that even though they're all clearly books, Isaac shakes his.
Isaac shakes his.
It's such a dumb joke.
Isaac shaking it like a kid, like at Christmas, like knowing that they've got socks, but shaking it just in case
there's a PlayStation in there.
That's good. We have the moment at the water cooler that we mentioned earlier with Rebecca and Higgins. It's great when he starts to follow her up the stairs and she goes, no. He goes, all right. And he just turns around and comes right back. That's great. Ted brings her biscuits. This is where we again referenced earlier that she's going to speak to the owner of the Sun. And then he says the line about that's so good. I can't get enough of that. So it's so funny because when she tells him she's going to do that, he starts chanting MVP really loudly. And every time he starts acting up, no one quite knows what to do because he's right in front of them and he's doing some kind of weird thing. That is so funny, man. He makes people unintentionally awkward all the time.
I've just found the books that were given. Apparently, it was a tactic used by Phil Jackson, the NBA coach.
That sounds familiar. Yeah.
The books that are visible, Sam gets a copy of Ender's Game, which kind of makes sense if you look at his. Yeah. Jamie gets The
That
Beautiful
makes
and the
sense.
Damned. Again, makes sense.
Hmm.
Robbie, who's Robbie? Apparently gets a copy of Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, which was made into that terrible film, and Roy gets A Wrinkle in Time.
There you go.
So it does, like, he has given them the tools they need to be aware of what's going to happen to them, apart from Robbie, whoever Robbie is.
I don't know who Robbie is. I'm thinking
No.
about it. I don't know who it is. Hey, what is up? Tom Clark here for Tom Clark's 6M Podcast, where we focus on movies, music, Marvel, magazines, miniseries, and more. It's a complete geek culture / pop culture podcast. Brand new episodes drop every Tuesday. The show is available for subscription right now today on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, Stitcher, Amazon Music, and YouTube. Just subscribe and you'll be all set. Tom Clark's 6M Podcast. What's funny, again, we come back to NBA with the Phil Jackson. We'll come back to it again with the practice speech. And that's not in these episodes, but it's coming up. We talk about practice because it's so good. And that's another NBA reference altogether. But you can tell Ted's coming from a place of, I learned valuable lessons in American sports. And these lessons are not American. These lessons are human. So I'm taking them across the pond to use it on this team because he doesn't know the game. He's learning. Doesn't know the first thing about it. Doesn't matter. Because, again, the show's not about the game. The show's about the people playing the game.
I think when Trent Crimm first comes out and they're talking about Nate, Ted defends him by saying he knows more. He's forgotten more about this than I'll ever know. And is this also the bit when it cuts to Nate and Nate goes, someone's been walking the dog here.
I found another poo. Yeah.
And he's like, no, he's good. And he's just like kicking a dog poo across the ground.
So it's that, you know, that those are some classic comedy bits.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's the stuff you put in sitcoms and it gets a laugh every time. Like when you put those bits in a show without a live studio audience, right? It still works because it works, you know.
It's funny. Someone giving you high praise and then you going, there's dog poo here. It's just always going to be funny.
It's going to be funny. Yeah, for sure.
After the practice, like Trent's just like snooping round their office. And Ted comes in and he's like, Trent, you're like one of those robot vacuum cleaners. Just looking for dirt. And Beard goes, a Roomba?
Yeah.
And he goes, yes.
Yeah.
And
Trent.
Yeah.
I love that. Obviously, Ted goes, "Oh yeah, do you want to tag along? We're going to talk at a school." And Trent's like, "Oh, it's funny. The one day you've got a journalist following you around, you go into a school." And Ted says, "That's a funny thing about coincidences."
Sometimes
I can't remember the rest of the line, but it's just like, yeah, and it's just like that's.
I mean, even the way Trent delivers the line here is like douchebaggy. The way he says it. Do you know what I mean?
I think the one kind of underlying thing I've got from this episode with Trent is that the more that the episode goes on, he can't help but find himself begrudgingly admiring Ted. Like he's desperate to dislike him at the start of this episode.
He's just jaded.
And
I think he's just like,
yeah. Well, I suppose if he's covering, like, if he's like, because obviously, like, with football journalism, I don't know if I assume it's the same with like other sports as well. A lot of the times, a writer will get assigned to a team as opposed to just covering like the broad sport. So, if he's literally been like stuck at like covering Richmond for God knows how many years, and it's just a middle of the road club, it's just the doldrums, and then something exciting's happened at the club, and all of a sudden he's like, well, this is a bad thing that this has happened.
This could make me. this is something to write about. When he has the meal later, like Ted says, like something that you love writing, and he goes, yeah, but like his heart's not really in it.
No.
Well, he pauses when he says it, doesn't he? He's like, what's something you love? And he goes, what about writing? And Trent goes, yeah. I love writing. But he's very like hesitant to say that he does. And I mean, in a way, this like article is kind of like the blueprint of the book, isn't it?
Yeah, we never see the finished book, but it feels like it would be this, but with a happy ending sort of thing. But they go to Roy's niece's school, Richmond Primary, I think it is.
Before we get there, not to cut you off, before we get there, we got to mention the bit with Roy and Keely in the parking lot. That has it has ramifications later too.
Oh, geez, this.
Well, so for me, this felt like it was the first time that Roy kind of like really noticed Keely, because whenever she'd been there normally, he'd either been in the shower because he lives in the shower in the first 2 episodes, or he'd just been not paying attention.
She was always
to
with
anything.
Jamie, so she's
she's instantly the enemy.
Yeah.
So like when they have the first kind of like the first scene together, and obviously he comes out and she like instantly like pauses and then goes like says something about Roy not having his shirt on, and then he does that really bad American
I'm
accent.
Ted Lasso. Yeah, you're terrible at impressions.
It's the most out of character Roy thing in the entire entirety of the show though, as well.
Bizarre that he does it, because he never does this again. But he says, "I'm Roy Kent, and no one can press my buttons. Like, I know what he's trying to do." And Keely goes, "I can press your buttons right now." And he starts talking, and she just talks over him, and he realizes what she's doing, and that he's just fallen at the first hurdle straight away.
So good.
Yeah. There's a bit though, like when she like walks away after she does the impression of him, doesn't she? And
I get paid to play a game,
but I'm mad all.
And I'm always angry.
But then he just goes, "Yeah, that was pretty good."
Yeah,
like, it's such a weird Roy thing.
It's like that's how she like kind of like wins him over immediately. Like that's like his love at first sight moment with her, is that she takes the piss out of him, and then he goes, "All right, yeah, she did a good job there." Because they firmly established throughout the rest of the show, there's only 2 people who can kind of have that rapport with Roy, Ted and Keely.
And
for sure,
in a Hallmark film, and that would be the meet
that's
cute.
like
well done.
Yes.
We go from
it's a little bit of
I know, right? We got to pair with the other show as well. So we go from that, before we get to the school, we go from that to a moment that is important, because I think this may be the first time we begin establishing Keely and Rebecca. So we're talking about relationships forming in the midst of Ted's presence.
I forgot about this, yes.
Oh,
and it is a delightful scene.
So good.
I thought it was way later.
I did as well.
I did too, yeah.
But then it makes sense with the next episode, because that's when like the bonds fully start forming. But yeah, she comes in, she's like, "Thank you for not running that picture. And also I brought you a present," and she gives her a tiny cactus.
Yeah.
Sits down on the couch, takes her shoes off.
Yeah, yeah.
And she's, "It's like you, it's small but prickly." And I was like, "Okay, yeah.
She says, "I've decided not to be scared of you anymore."
To be scared of you.
So good. You ever told anybody that in your life?
Like you could just decide, like, "Yeah, I'm not scared of you anymore."
Right.
And it's almost like she's gone, "I can see what you're going through, and I know you're going to need a friend."
Well, she says, doesn't she, like, "I appreciate it. I suppose you can kind of relate to me because your divorce was in like all over the headlines." And like that, as soon as she says that, like you can see Rebecca kind of like questions why she'd ever done that in the first place.
She goes, "Oh, she isn't just some bimbo. like she's got a brain in there as well. Like
Yeah.
she can see the similarities between her and me. And then she goes, yeah, but it's not like they would have taken a topless photograph of you 2 weeks after your divorce. And Keely immediately is like, I need to see this picture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a highly specific thing you've just said there.
So good. She says that they took it from a helicopter over a yacht.
While she was sunbathing.
Yep.
She shows it Keely, and Keely is the line is, "I'm like a teenage boy. I can't stop staring at it."
Yeah. It says,
where did you get those from? And she goes, my mum. And it's like, again, it's that thing of breaking people down by, like, it's not a horrible thing. It's a compliment, if anything.
It is.
But it's just disarming.
Well, it's being genuine, right?
Yeah. You can see, like, Rebecca, like, going from being really, like, frosty about Keely even being in the room to kind of, like, warm into the situation there and then, and, like having a big smile on her face where, like, after. And it's just like a really like nice thing where it's like she doesn't like Rupert isn't the thing that's defined her. She can have a life after Rupert, and I think that's one of the first steps she kind of takes to realizing that with like a relationship with Keely.
And this show is really good at throwing in moments they don't need to add. Join the Untitled Wrestling Podcast for all the latest pro wrestling news from around the world. Want to dive deeper? Interviews, fantasy booking, roundtable discussions, quizzes, video game streaming, watch-alongs, and a lot more can all be found on YouTube and wherever podcasts are available. You can also find the show on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Untitled Wrestling Podcast, and Twitter, Twitch, and Discord at Untitled Rest Pod. Follow, subscribe, and download today. Like the ampersand or like the dot, right?
Yeah.
Because they throw in this bit, right as you think Keely's gone, she stops in the hallway and says, "You really blew my brains out with those beautiful breasts of yours."
Yeah.
And that was like Rebecca, just the actress herself, just breaks down laughing. She loves it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Shoes. Yeah. She comes back in for her shoes.
So good.
She's startled by the boobies. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, aren't we all? I like that little critical response.
No, it is. It's like you can get a man to do anything. Yeah,
that's fair.
But we go to this again. One of those bits that is quite subtle, but made me laugh. The headmaster's like, "I didn't think we'd win anything, but we won the league." And I'm like, they're 8, 9-year-old kids. Don't pile that pressure on them. But he goes, and here is the new manager of Richmond, and he calls him like Ed Larson.
Ed Lasso.
He calls him Ed Lasso.
And Ted.
And Ted just like.
And he goes, I appreciate you. And doesn't try and correct him or anything.
Never once.
That's fine. Whatever.
Yeah. Even like when there's that bit as well when that like little kid calls Ted a wanker, just like, under his breath. And it just straight away goes to Trent, just grinning like a Cheshire cat.
But again, Ted just skates over it, and he's like, "And here is your captain of Richmond, Roy Kent." And Roy, I was never one for school. Thought it was a waste of time. Still do. Like, but he says, "What say we get out of here and have a fuck about on the park?" And he's just like, all the kids are like,
"Yeah, it's a hesitation." Because and then bam, it's again comedy timing. You wait and then you react. So
yes, good. And we find out that this is because Roy's niece goes here, and we see her off distance, and she plays a role later on. But then we get like this the montage of them doing headers. And again, it's that weird thing of like Ted being like a golden retriever. He's just like boundless energy from the man. And fair play to Roy as well. Like he's good. Oh, he's playing into it, which is unlike the Roy we've seen up to this point because I think also because his niece is there. But it's when Ted just comes in and heads the ball back at him, and he's like, "Well done." It's just a weirdly beautiful thing.
When he points out his niece to Ted, and then he goes, "That fucking idiot over there," and then she comes over, and then he just has this big grin, like, "Hi."
So good. And she pops him in the face with the ball. And the
Boots
sound
the ball.
effect is great, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
But it's the fact that Roy just sort of laughs and goes, well done.
Well done. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
And then Ted signing the ball for the little kid and his nose is bleeding out.
Don't
He's like,
clone
don't clone me now.
Oh, it's again just these little throwaway lines that are so good.
And the principal thanks them for coming. Is that what it is there? Is it principal or is it
head teachers? They're called
head teacher?
normally.
Okay.
Head teacher.
So he thanks them, and we think it's going to end okay. He says as long as anyone's ever stayed. And Ted thanks Roy. He thanks him for it. He compliments Phoebe. Roy tells him, and this is where it goes south. I've had enough of your mind games. And Trent overhears this, of course. And he says, what even is A Wrinkle in Time? And Trent says it's a lovely novel. It's the story of a young girl's struggle with the burden of leadership as she journeys through space.
Am I meant to be the girl?
That's it. That's so good.
And Ted goes, I'd like you to be.
I'd like you to be, yeah. He said, I'm doing what everyone else in this town is doing. Count down the days till you're gone. And then he calls Trent, you're a colossal prick. You always have been. And then he walks away.
Phoebe.
I love the fact that Roy's like storming off, but then he's got like Phoebe by a hand, like a responsible adult as well.
Because knowing what he becomes later, it's heartbreaking that I just want, like, I love watching it unfold, but I'm like, I just want to hurry up and get the good guy Roy. I want to get there. You know what I mean? It's so funny.
You got to build that foundation before you like put the house on top, though. That's the.
Got it. Like with everyone, you've got to crack into crack through the layers, haven't you?
You've got to break them down to build them up.
Peel the onion.
Yes.
Peel the onion. So we got to get to this Indian restaurant scene because the first time the dog's just getting the 2 cents worth in.
I know. Just a menace, aren't you?
The Indian restaurant scene. For the second time I've seen this, I physically got. Maybe uncomfortable is not the right word. For Ted, in my chair, I'm like, oh God, this is hard to watch. And chances are he's not even eating hot food at all.
No. But I don't know if, like Ted says, don't know. Never had Indian food before. Have you had Indian food before?
I can't say that I went to an honest to God, authentic Indian restaurant, but I have tried it. And man, what I tried was, ooh.
Yeah, if you have anything beyond, say, Madras, like. It can cripple a man. Like, I think drunkenly ordered a fowl once in an Indian restaurant, and it's not big and it's not
What's
clever.
It called?
It was a PHAAL fowl. It's just a type of. It's just different combinations of things in the sauce. But he's sitting there and he's talking, and is it Ollie?
Ollie, played by Jimmy Akimbola, who was the limo driver from episode 1.
Limo driver. But Ted recognizes him straight away. Like, he's got it locked in.
Well, it's the way, like, Ollie says, oh, Ted Lasso, what are you doing here? And he's like, well, you invited me to come, so I was going to come check it out.
But he goes, this is my friend Trent Crimm, and this is my buddy Ollie. You've both just met an amazing person. And I'm like, it's just...
Yeah, I love that.
He's just such a nice man.
He is.
And he's like, oh, well, Ollie's like, my father-in-law runs the place. And he says, well, get us what he'd make for the family. And he's like, oh, you okay with spicy food? Yeah, it's fine. Like, he's talking to Trent through this. And it's the, I don't care about wins and losses. I want to make those boys the best versions of themselves off and on the field.
Yeah.
And that's the thing.
Well, he says it to him earlier, doesn't he? And then he says, I'm going to say it again so you know I'm serious about it. I don't like the fact I've said this twice now is to kind of like reinforce the point I want to make. I'm here to make these people better people on and off the pitch, not just win games. I
don't care about wins and losses.
And he says it's not easy, but neither is growing up without someone who believes in you. My God, no wonder the writing won awards here. That's such good writing.
It is hokey, but it's said with such genuine like belief behind it that it's very good. Ollie brings out this food, and like they split it, and immediately
Trent's
you can see the panic on Ted's face.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, oh, that is spicy. Like,
Not for nothing, but it looks delicious, doesn't it? It looks really good.
It look really good. So as well though, like I think when after Trent had like that first bite of spicy food, he's like, I can't eat that. I think that's the most genuine Trent is with Ted in the entire episode because he's vulnerable because he's got ridiculously spicy food in his mouth.
But it's Ted going, we have to make it in it, otherwise he's going to look bad in front of his father-in-law. And Trent's like, I can't eat it. And he's like, well, put it on my plate. I'll eat it then.
Yep.
And then, Ted's like, is my tongue still in my mouth? Because it feels like it's on fire.
So I'm about to hallucinate from all the heat.
He's just but he's still plowing it into his face. And like, just so as not to like upset someone. And it's what sort of Ted does is help other people sort of to the detriment of himself.
And I think he gets Trent. He's got Trent by the end because Trent goes to leave and Ted tells him, he said, I really enjoyed getting to spend time with you. And he goes, you actually mean that, don't you?
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's when he got him.
That's when Trent's like, he's genuine.
There's a really, really great timed line in this scene as well, where it's after Ted's ordered the food, and then Trent goes, what you're doing here is really irresponsible. And it's like got a double meaning because it's like obviously ordering this really spicy food that he's going to have to try and eat. But also then he's like, you're coming into this club, you're playing with something that people like love, and like people like football in the UK with like some places, it's literally the lifeblood of a community. And that's what Trent's trying to kind of like put across to Ted. And Ted's like, well, I just want to make everyone better. Like people, I don't care about like, I don't care about wins and losses. And that's like, again, it's even in that article that Trent puts out in the end, it's very cynical, but in a way where it's like, but I admire the man that I'm very cynical of. But yeah, even the article itself, it's like a gigantic backhanded compliment towards Ted.
It's true.
And I love Trent as a character throughout the whole show anyway, because he starts off as like such a prick, and then the more Ted peels back with Trent, you always instantly think the worst of Trent, and then he'll like surprise you. And that's kind of like what Ted's trying to do with everyone, isn't it?
Well, I mean, because honestly, like we've been saying about Trent the whole time, is if this column goes the way Rebecca wants it to go, Ted's cooked. That's it. You know what I mean? So like the fact that it doesn't go that way, the fact that he won over this hard-boiled, jaded journalist means that he's the real deal. He has to be the real deal. I mean, it's, it works, man. I love that actually.
Yeah, especially when like Rebecca's when Higgins is reading Rebecca the article at the end of the episode, and like she like it starts off really like negative, and she's like sort of like relishing in it, and then Higgins kind of pauses, and she's like, "Why are you pausing?" And he's like, "You don't need me to continue this." It's as like Higgins is revealing how like the whole article is just like a backhanded compliment towards Ted.
So all right, so here is the article. Whatever you think of Ted Lasso as a football coach, I assure you the truth is harder to swallow. And you're like, ugh. And swallow you must, because Ted is out there in the community, either bravely or stupidly facing the music. That's for you to decide. And yes, he's in over his head. He insisted twice that he didn't care if Richmond won or lost. But if that the Lasso way is wrong, it's hard to imagine being right. And like you said, that's when he stops reading and he says, remember, these aren't my words, but Trent's. In a business that celebrates ego, Ted reigns his
While
end.
all this is happening, though, it shows Ted in the community. Walking, one of the kids from the school is like, how's your nose? He's like, oh, it's fine. And he chats with them all. And then those three lads are like, fuck off, wanker. Apart from that one in the middle who's like, hello, because he always is. He's like,
Yeah.
he's like the daft one, isn't he? But
I love the way he turns to go, every time you ruin it.
Yeah, every time.
It
it's
shows
so good.
Ted has integrated himself in this community, for better or worse, but he is out there doing the legwork.
And it's not so much as reading the article here; it's he's narrating. He's narrating what's actually happening in real life. Yeah, that's so good. He said, "In a business that celebrates ego, Ted reins his in. His coaching style is subtle; it never hits you over the head, slowly growing until you can no longer ignore its presence. Whether that means allowing followers to become leaders, or in a show of respect, eating food so spicy it's sure to wreak massive havoc on his intestinal system." Then we see Ted.
Just running into it.
Again, I don't know if you've ever had incredibly spicy food, but when it hits you, there ain't no stopping it. Like it's coming out.
And though I believe Ted Lasso, like we said, will fail here, and Richmond will suffer the embarrassment of relegation, I won't gloat when it happens because I can't help but root for him. Hey, Tom Clark here for Tom Clark's Main Event, and if you are not subscribed, you're doing life wrong. Going strong since 2014 with over 300 episodes and a variety of guests that include Randy Orton, The Big Show, Rob Van Dam, and a lot more. Check us out on all the major platforms, including YouTube at Boink Studios. Subscribe today, Tom Clark's Main Event. Rebecca goes, fuck! Like she's so upset.
The whole thing's falling apart. Like her backup plan
falling apart
of having Ted like humiliated by Trent has gone by the wayside.
100%. She's lost it. And we skipped over Roy reading the book to Phoebe.
Yeah.
Because it clicks.
It's literally when he's just sitting there reading it and he just goes, fuck. And she goes, that's a bad word. He goes, shut up, Phoebe. Like,
he's like, mind your own business.
Mind your own business. And you notice he gets
stomps off.
But then he comes right back.
Be good. Yeah.
Yeah.
He comes right back.
He does get, but it is, and he's like, I think this is when like Roy starts to realize that Ted has his best intentions at heart, because up to this point he was 100%. Very dismissive of him, but it's just that bit where he puts the book down and just swears, and it's brilliant.
So good, because the line that he's reading to her is, what do you understand? That it has to be me. It can't be anyone else. That doesn't give you cold chills, nothing will. Like that's Ted wants him to know it has to be you. It can't be me. It can't be Beard. It can't be Sam. It has to be you taking ownership
this sort
of this
reiterates
team.
What he said to Beard as well about it having to be Roy. He has to be the first one to go.
Yeah. Well, like that's obviously because Roy's the captain as well. Like, on the field, he needs to be as influential as Ted is off it.
But is at this point is Roy being a captain, or is he like running that? Because Jamie's like running everything, isn't he? Right, he's got his little clique and stuff.
Well, that's what I mean. Like Roy's like the captain, but he's essentially not got the control that a captain should have. And it's Ted making Roy step up as a leader in this episode that is so important to Roy's character arc, because it helps him adapt to the role of being the team captain, but also it helps him like off the field as a man, like realize, I can't just like idly let someone like be bullied by a gang of guys idiots on my team. Like I need to be the grown up here and tell them to stop.
Have we missed the bit where Roy goes to the club?
It's at the end.
No, it's right at the end of the episode.
He stomps in, and they're all there in like the VIP section. And
Colin's a douche again. Colin's a douchebag, and he says, he said, I didn't know this was a retirement party. And
he just sticks the nut on him. Like, it's brilliant.
Oh,
I don't know who I just hit because I don't see too well in the dark.
I love, though, again, there's another another bit with Keely and Roy in this
Doesn't
scene
look.
where Roy's like basically like reads Jamie the riot act, and like Jamie looks like shook, but then Keely's looking at him with like admiration, and then like
he picks
watching
up
him
the
leave.
bottle, drinks it, and goes, "Vanilla vodka, you're such a child." And then he goes, "Keely," and like nods and walks off, and you can see Keely going, "Oh, wait, so there's."
Yeah.
So one thing as well is that it's the next episode where they actually establish the age gap between Keely and Jamie, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because like you can tell like Keely's like more mature than Jamie, but I didn't think they'd established too well that there was a bit of an age gap between them.
I thought it was a couple of years and not like
I did too.
7 years, I think it is. 6, 7 years. Yeah.
6 years it is, yeah.
She comes off very young, doesn't she?
I think that's kind of her,
because
she is a glamour model. She's got to be, and like she's 30 now. Like it's when you would think about packing that in and moving on to something else. I think, not being a lady, but yeah, it's just that bit where he just nuts him, and he's like, "Stop picking on Nate," and like Jamie is shook because he's been humiliated in front of all his boys as well.
Oh, that's very true. That's
like
very
Roy
true.
just comes in, sticks the nut on one of them, and literally says, like, "Stop being a child."
Yeah.
So, something else actually we forgot to mention, which I've just remembered then when you said that, from the Keely and Roy scene earlier on, is when he like says to Keely why he's like on the warpath looking for Jamie, and he's like, they're picking on Nate. I don't even know his fucking surname. And then she goes, "Oh, it's Nate Groves." He goes, "No, it's Nate Shelley." And she goes, "Oh, so you do know his surname?"
So good.
Again, it's just pushing his buttons. Like she said, it is just there. He does care. He just can't show it because he's never been shown that affection.
But yeah, and I think as well, she sees at the start of the episode, he sees that like he's met his match with her, but then by the end of the episode, she kind of sees with Roy like, what am I doing with this idiot when I could be with him?
Yes, that all comes tumbling down in the next episode, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, episode 4, as we'll see, bookends this one quite nicely because, as we said, we see progression. And I had this thought today before we started. By the last few episodes, maybe in my head, like I knew the end was coming, but I'm like, the end's coming because I felt like the characters are good. They're good. Whatever was their hang-ups, their problems, their issues, they're not perfect now, but man, they're so much better than they were in the first 5 episodes. Yeah. Everyone's dealt with their issues. And because of Ted, everyone's better. So like when you're watching or reading something and everybody's good, story's over.
Yeah.
It's over. And if the story continues,
it's
why? The story's
over. It's the
over.
curse of American sitcoms is that you've told the story. Why are we on season 9 of this? There's no stories left to tell. Just before we finish this one as well, I will say when they do that play, the don't pass to Jamie play, and he says to Sam, "How did that feel?" And Sam says, "I felt that in my penis."
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, and also when when the play goes off, he says to Nate, "How was that?" And he went, "It was kind of exciting and weird." And Ted goes, "Like when you get your first pube." But just walks off after he said it. Like it, that's
just walks off. Yeah,
it's brilliant.
Hits him with one-liners and just leaves it where it is. So, well, kids, there's episode 3. Hey, another one in the can, and we move on. So, guys, Jay, we'll start with you. What's your biggest takeaways from this episode? What is it you leave this episode knowing maybe that you didn't know before?
I think I didn't realize they started like laying the groundwork for Roy and Keely this early. And like when you see it, like as soon as they're on the camera together, it's like, oh, okay. Like the first time I watched that, I don't think I really noticed it. Like half the kind of stuff that happened with them. I think there's so many brilliant, like, just throwaway lines in this episode too. It's genuinely, I think, one of my favorite episodes from the first season.
Agreed.
Because it's just such a nice, like, self-contained story with, like, essentially Ted winning Trent over, but then all the other kind of moving parts around it, like with Roy and Keely and Rebecca, even Rebecca kind of like reflecting a bit and seeing what, like, with like the Keely thing, like why would I do that to her? Like, she's like an innocent, not that Ted isn't not innocent, but like Keely's like a completely innocent like bystander in this, and like Rebecca was willing to throw her under the bus, and then it turns out she's not as bad as she thought, sort of thing. I guess the moral of the episode, isn't it? Don't judge a book by its cover.
Books he gives them.
Because of the books he gives them.
Oh my God, that was brilliant. That was
Beautiful
so good.
and the Damned.
Well, yes.
So good.
As we find out.
Don't mess with people, kids, because there will be collateral damage. And the person that you're targeting, for whatever reason you're targeting them, you might think this will be great. Someone else is going to get hurt. It's not a good idea.
Always someone at the other end. That's the problem with it.
Yes. Joe, what do you think?
Again, the same thing, but it's also, this is where we start to see Roy stepping up, and we realise that he isn't just like a heartless old man. Like, he's not even that old, is he? He's like 37? No. Is he something like that he's supposed to be?
He's old by football and terms.
But we start to see him realise that Ted has everyone's best intentions at heart. And like Jay said, it's where also we start to see Rebecca letting her guard down, even briefly. Just those split second laughs that she does with, where she realizes that she isn't thick, she isn't like there is something behind those eyes, and maybe she realizes now that she shouldn't have tried to do what she intended to do. Because, like you said, someone's going to get hurt either way. But she still has the destruction of Rupert's team as her main goal. Like, she's just going to have to go about it by different methods now. Like, where there's less, quote unquote, less collateral damage. But it is, like I said, I think one of those episodes that is a perfectly self-contained episode. You could watch that on its own and not know anything about the characters before or afterwards, and it tells you everything that you need to know about them.
They give you enough context on everybody. I really believe that on episode 4, by the way, 100%. That they give you enough context on the characters to see things are changing as the story goes on. For sure, kids. I think that we're just getting better and better and better. It's a hit show. What more can you ask for? This is how we do it. I'm anxious to get to episode 4. If I had to, I'll piggyback on what you guys said for the takeaways here. To be honest with you, I 100%. And I love that we got Trent. I love that we got him. You know what I mean? Ted got him, which means we got him, because by the end of this episode, if you're not rooting for Ted already, you will be. And so the more he converts people, not to his side, but just to, it's not always about you. Get over yourself and try to see that I'm not a villain. I'm not here to hurt anyone. You may think I'm an idiot, whatever, but I'm actually just here to help.
Trent to just his way of thinking, that it isn't always so black and white. There is the spaces in between.
I love that. Very good. That's how we end it, kids. Stick around. There's a lot more to come. We're hammering them out as we go. That's it for this time. For Joe and Jay, I'm Tom. See you next time.